Before the names of cities were ever carved into stone, before the ink of language stained cave walls, there was a time, forgotten by history and faded from memory, when a city stood tall beneath skies, heavy with salt and stars. It was a city born not of myth, but of mystery. A city older than Atlantis, a city swallowed by the sea. They called it, though no one truly remembers, Aletheria. Aletheria was carved not from marble, but from coral, smoothed by tides and kissed by sunlight. Its towers spiraled like conch shells, glistening with pearls embedded by hand and time. Gardens floated atop still lagoons, their flowers bioluminescent, opening only under the full moon. Bridges made from woven seaweed and bone-connected domes that sang when the wind passed through. The people of Aletheria were gentle, tall, and patient. Their language had no word for war. Instead, they spoke in a tongue of tides, where every sentence rose and fell like waves. They told stories with water, painting currents in the air that others could read, as if emotion itself had form. But one night, the tides changed, and with them, the stars. The ocean, their eternal companion, began whispering warnings. First came the pull, tides stronger than any living soul had felt. Boats tied to coral docks snapped away like feathers. Then the heat, waters warm enough to boil shellfish alive in shallow pools. Then the silence. The sea went still, as if holding its breath. The seers of Aletheria gathered at the Temple of the Abyss, a dome deeper than any other, built atop a chasm that reached into the earth's bones. They listened not with ears, but with bones, for the sea speaks in pressure and vibration, and what it said chilled them to their cores. The earth will shudder, and the sky will sink. The city trembled, not from quakes of stone, but from the weight of dread. Children stopped playing in the moon pools. The schools of silverfish that used to dance near the light spires vanished. The sea turtles, sacred and slow, turned and fled into the abyss without a backward glance. The High Seer, a woman known as Miriel, summoned the oracles. These were not prophets of words, but interpreters of patterns, shifts in tide, temperature, the songs of whales, the bloom of algae, and all pointed to a singular truth. The sea was preparing to consume what it had once nurtured. Miriel stood before the city and raised her voice in a ritual cadence. Aletheria, listen. Your bones are strong, but water carves even stone. Prepare for the deep sleep. The people wept, not out of fear, but out of reverence. They did not see the ocean as a destroyer, but as a mother with no choice. They gathered memories, woven sea silk, carved driftwood tales, shells etched with ancestral lines, and placed them in the memory vessels. These vessels were sent out with the currents, carrying the story of Aletheria to wherever tides touched land. But as the memory vessels vanished into the horizon, the sky betrayed them. The stars shifted. Constellations that guided fishermen and dreamers began to fade. In their place, a spiral opened in the heavens, swirling like a cyclone of light. And from that light came a sound. Not thunder, not roar, but a deep hum that pulsed through coral, bone, and thought. A sound that vibrated the very idea of self. It was as if the sky had become a throat, and earth its drum. Miriel fell to her knees. The old voice, she whispered, the one that speaks before creation. The hum did not cease. It deepened, Fish began to beach themselves against coral walls, confused by vibrations they could not escape. Coral wilted and retracted as if sensing the end. Miriel called for silence. Not that it was needed. The entire city had grown quiet. The sound had invaded dreams, reshaping them into visions of flood and fire. In secret, Miriel returned to the Temple of the Abyss and opened the sealed archive, the Opaline Codex. A living scroll written in the ink of abyssal squid, it shimmered with phrases only readable under stress light, those wavelengths emitted during great seismic strain. She dipped the temple's heartstone into the scroll, awakening ancient glyphs. They told of the first collapse, not Atlantis, but a world before even it. A ring of luminous cities swallowed whole when the sea turned to mirror the stars. Aletheria was a remnant, a survivor, and its time had come. The hum swelled, and then the first quake hit. Not from above, from beneath. The sea floor cracked like ancient pottery, releasing clouds of heat and methane. Fountains of boiling silt rose into the blue, and a chain of tremors rippled across Aletheria. Domes shattered, gardens burst. The great coral library fell into a sinkhole. Miriel gathered the remaining elders and spoke clearly. We are not meant to be saved. We are meant to be remembered. They activated the last pearl, a device ancient beyond even Miriel's understanding, crafted not by hands, but by symbiosis, a living relic grown from sea thought. When activated, it would not preserve bodies, but it would store essence, memory, history. The people of Aletheria stood together as the currents rose and the last pearl began to glow. As the last pearl shimmered, a column of memory light spiraled upward, cutting through sea, crust, and sky, etching Aletheria's final story into the very fabric of Earth. Whales, far above, sang the tone in unison. The spiral in the sky collapsed into a final pulse of golden radiance. And then, silence. The city was gone. Not destroyed, not drowned, simply returned. Returned to the sea, to the stars, to the hum from which all things began. But the memory vessels floated still, washed ashore on distant lands, their bioluminescence fading slowly, waiting for eyes curious enough to see and minds open enough to hear. If you stand by the edge of the ocean, in the silence between tides, and listen, not with ears but with your breath, you may yet hear Aletheria whisper, "We are not lost. We became the water, and the water remembers." If Aletheria touched your soul, stay with us for the next journey. When the sky wept fire, the fall of the feathered giants. A story about a forgotten world where winged titans ruled the skies and the heavens turned against them. Subscribe, like, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss what came before humans.